Okay, I think I'm going to begin. I want to welcome you all to the fourth and last installment of the Scientific Communication Workshop Series for 2025. And I do want to say that we do have another workshop available. There's actually two of them. Our Responsible Conduct of Research has our last workshop on Monday, the 14th of April on conflicts of interest. And then June 4th, we have Dr. Peter Elkin joining us for an introduction to biomedical informatics, something we were just talking about with the master's program, which can lead into a free boot camp that he is offering as well through the Biomedical Informatics Core, which is really, really wonderful. Their program is really great. So I do want to tell you about that. I'm going to be placing in the chat information on our workshops from a URL. And then I also want to tell you that it's not too late if you'd like to still do the scientific communication micro-credential, which I'm going to put my email address in the chat. And we use a series of videos, so no worries if you have not gotten everything um, uh, as far as attended all of these series, because we do use some workshops from the past, and I plan on replacing one of those with this one because we have a wonderful speaker today, and she's expanded on the information that she's giving you. And I'm going to give that as well for the micro-credentials for the video. I also want to tell you that I'm going to be placing in the chat twice. It's the same survey, but I'm going to put it in there twice. A survey in order to really evaluate the series and evaluate this workshop. And that really helps us to amend the series and change the series. And we also take your interests in mind for a future series. And Diane Schwartz does a wonderful job of making sure that your thoughts are incorporated into the series in the future. And actually, I'm going to pass it on to Diane this time in order to introduce our wonderful speaker. Diane, over to you.
Thank you, Catherine. It is really a distinct pleasure to welcome back Dr. Remi Adelaiye-Ogala, PhD. Dr. Ogala, as a research scientist, investigates genitourinary cancers. She uses basic and translational research methods that emphasize molecular regulation of signaling pathways in both prostate and renal cancers, and therapeutic strategies to overcome drug resistance that could be caused by either genetic or epigenetic factors. She has developed an interest in communicating science. And so we call the title of today's session, Making Your Message Count, Communicating Research to Everyone. And it is my sincere pleasure to introduce you, if you don't know Dr. Remi, to Dr. Remi. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Diane. That's for that really humbling introduction. I feel really honored to be here, and I'm excited to give this workshop series. And I also want to thank Catherine, who has worked with me in trying to make sure that we're able to make this as interactive as possible, which is what I really love. So I'm going to be talking about making your message count and communicating your research to everyone. There we go. So I don't have any disclosures. So think about it as, if you have a relative or brother like myself who has no science interest and is not has an expert in anything science, you can get cards like this, something along the lines of, well done, doing whatever you're doing, and or you try to explain your research and halfway through, they're in another world. So how do we effectively communicate our research to folks like these so that they really understand what we're doing and why it matters to them? And so that is really kind of the goal for this workshop series is, an effective scientific communication to help people, which is our audience, understand what it's is that we do and why it matters to them, right? And so the goal is really communicating scientific information with the public and preparing to speak to your audience, identifying your audience, and how to tailor your presentations so that you're able to catch the interest of your audience and also capture communicating at different levels to, if you have a diverse audience, okay? So I want to start off with a message, right? So a good strategy when you want to present your information to a public is to lead your talk with the main point. For instance, what is it that you really do and why does it matter to them? You want to be clear about that. You want to prepare your statement, think of it as a pitch, one statement. You want it to be focused, clear, concise, and you don't want to go off tangents. Once you start going off tangents, you lose the attention of your audience. So a tip that I always kind of use is tailor your message in such a way that it's like a news headline. It set the tone for your audience and it gets their attention. And then secondly, you want to think about the audience. You want to know your audience. You could have an audience that is a mixture of experts and non-experts. You can have an audience where you have, elementary school graders, young adults. And so you want to know the audience that you'll be presenting to so you know how to put your talk or your message together. It's always safer to frame your message and communicate your science in more basic terms rather than using complex terms, because once you start using complex and heavy technical terms, you easily lose your audience that way, especially if you have an audience of non-expert peers. So this is the interesting part. Want to have this interactive session and think about how you would pitch your research message and think about it as a one statement, a sentence pitch. And I have here what I call 3 levels. So level 1 would be an audience that comprises of elementary grade, second grade students. And then level 2 would be an audience where you have non-expert peers. And I have a level 3, which is an audience where you have experts in your area of research. And so I'm going to give an example with my abstract. And I know halfway through, most of you are going to kind of, zone out on this. So my area is in androgen receptors in prostate cancer. And so here I have androgen receptors, targeted therapies such as abiraterone, enzalutamide, apalutamide, and darolutamide are effective treatments for patients with advanced castrate-resistant prostate cancer, CRPC. However, resistance to these therapies represents a significant hurdle in the clinical management of advanced CRPC. Despite initial clinical benefits, most patients relapse with acquired resistance within a year. An emerging mechanism of acquired resistance to AR-targeted therapy is the ability of tumor cells to adapt to non-canonical AR activity for survival. Our immediate goal is to leverage information from the molecular studies to recognize a subset of patients where resistance is driven by non-canonical AR activity using a multi-omic-based markers. Furthermore, our study will provide the mechanisms and vulnerabilities of the altered AR system drivers and the implications for drug discovery and developing optimal therapeutic options for this subset of patients. Now, I know a majority of you who are not in this area of expertise probably zoned out halfway through, but let me show you what it looks like when I would want to pitch it to an elementary school student in one sentence. All I need to say is something along the lines of, I study ways to help treat men with cancer disease. Or if I'm talking to a non-expert peer, I'll say something along the line of, I study ways to develop treatment alternatives for men with advanced prostate cancer. And then if I were to pitch to, my peers that are experts in my field of research, I would say something along the line of, I investigate mechanisms of treatment-resistant prostate cancers and develop therapeutic strategies to overcome resistance. So I hope this kind of gives you an idea of how you can, tailor or pitch, your research to a different level of audience that you have. And so what I want to do is to take out 15 minutes into breakout rooms, and I want in each breakout room have a designated presenter, a recorder, and then someone who would report on, your uh discussions in the room. And what I want to do is to have a speaker talk about their research and present it to a level 3 in a way that they would present to a level 1, level 2, and level 3 audience. And then this would go, I think about 10 to 15 minutes should be okay. And then once we come back from the break, I would like each person from a breakout room to kind of present to us the way they would present, or a reporter from each breakout room present, give a one sentence presentation on how they would pitch the research to a level 1 audience, a level 2 audience, and level 3 audience. So, Catherine, if you could take everyone to the breakout room.
Great. And I just want to tell you that I want you to think of your process too. There's those 3 levels. The level of a second grader or an elementary school student. The level 2 is to a peer. And the level 3 is to an expert also in your field. So I just want you to think about what was your process? Which did you start with first? So that's going to be pretty important as well. So I'm going to open all rooms. You're going to get about 10 to 15 minutes. So we're going to come back at 4:30. All we ask is that, again, you pick some sort of research that you're involved with or research you're interested in. And please craft those 3 messages. And those 3 messages, again, are going to be at the level 1, the second grade level. Level 2 is to a peer. And level 3 is going to be to more or less maybe an expert in your field. So I'm going to open these rooms. Just make sure everyone has someone that they're going to be with. I'll open all rooms. We'll be back around 4:30.
Okay, welcome everyone. I hope you had a very nice interactive session and able to come up with your one pitch sentence for each level of an audience. So what I want to do first is just take a poll and see one, what level did you start with? And also just explain like the process that you used and which of the levels was quite difficult to start with. So what I want to do now is just take a poll and see if anyone could.
So the poll is up. All you need to do is answer this question.
Okay, so we have about 83%. So 5 out of 6 said they started with level 1. That's pretty cool. And 1 out of 7, well, out of 6 started with level 3. No one started with level 2.
Which was our prediction.
That is
But,
a yeah,
it's possible.
exactly. Okay. So that is good. So I would like, if possible, someone from each group, present their one statement for a pitch message from the speaker from your group, and how you would present your message to a level 1 audience, a level 2 audience, a level 3 audience.
And please also tell us just what your topic was.
Exactly. And
Right.
remember, there's no right or wrong answer.
So who wants to go from group 1, which I believe is Diane's group?
I can go.
Thanks, Marissa.
Thanks, Marissa.
So our topic was adolescent eating behaviors and autonomy. So we kind of discussed it and we said for level 1, if we're looking at like elementary school children, we would say something along the lines of we hope to learn about teenagers eating behaviors, so what they eat, when they eat, and who they eat with. And then for non-expert peers, we said something along the lines of studying teenage eating behaviors and their level of choice over those behaviors. And then for experts, we're looking at children aged 13 to 17 with a family history of type 2 diabetes with a BMI at the 84th percentile or above, and looking at their eating behaviors and autonomy.
Thank you so much, Marisa. That's excellent. And one thing that, that we can, observe from this is that as we move from one level to the next, we add more details. We use more, we use less basic language that you would use for elementary school. And so it's really nice to see the transition from a level one of how you'd explain the research to a grade, second grader, and how you would explain the research to experts in the field, all of which were done in a concise manner. So that's an excellent presentation. So who wants to go from group 2?
I think that was Dave Jacobs' group.
But maybe we'll move to group 3 while,
Good idea.
for group 2. So anyone from group 3 wants to give it a shot?
And that was Liz Bangert's group.
I think I'll be the brave one in the group here. All right, my level 1, which I started with. Well, first off, my research topic is in the field of team science. And my level 1 summary is, I study teamwork in groups of people who do research. The second level for peers is, my research involves studying how teams involved in different disciplines and fields of expertise collaborate. And my level 3 is, my research involves tracking interdisciplinary research productivity using institutional databases among faculty and research scientists at UB.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you for being the brave one from your group. Again, we can see that as you move from one level to the next, and to the next, you're adding more details. And once you get to an audience that is a representative of experts in your field, you use more of the language that, is being used in that space. And so I think that we can all kind of get an idea of what it would feel like or what it looks like to present our research to different level of audience. That is an elementary school, whether it's an audience of non-experts or experts among in our field of research. And so just moving on, my pointer works well. So what I want to do here is talk about how to prepare to speak to your audience. So what does the audience really care about? And then when you're looking at different audiences, for instance, the general public, what they really want to know is how your research impacts their lives and your society. What does it mean to them? They want to see the big picture, not necessarily the nitty-gritty molecular aspects of the research, which is important. But what they're really looking to hear is, how does your research or what you're doing impact my life, impacts the life of my neighbor and the society as a whole? So when you're preparing to give your talk or talk about your research to the general public, you want to have those elements in there. And then in the media setting, what they really want to know is, how does it make a difference? Why is your research important? And how is it different from what others have done? Because they always want to bring something breaking. What's the breaking news? So when you're, preparing to speak in a media setting, you want to start off with a pitch on, the significance of the research that you're doing. And of course, in a language that, is can be understood by a diverse audience. And then when you're talking to your colleagues up here, say a scientific meeting, you want to give your presentation, prepare your talk in such a way that the end goal is really to provide an opportunity for future collaborations, and also to expand more on the project that you're working on. So elements to capture that is quite important. And then you also want to look at the background and experiences of the audience, and one of the things that is very important that, I myself always try to actively incorporate when I give a talk is really understanding the diversity of the background. And you want to set a table where there's an option for mutual learning. So you're learning from me, I'm also learning from you. And some of the key points is you want your talk to be purposeful and meaningful. And you want to encourage interactions, and interaction between yourself and the audience allows for a stimulating conversation. It also allows for opportunities to learn more about your audience and them learning more about the work you're doing, and also how that's going to impact them as well. And you want to be intentional as well. And then you want to think about what you want them to learn and how you would want them to respond. So your key findings, why does it matter? You must also be ready to answer questions. Some people always have questions. So why is this important? Why is looking for an alternative treatment for prostate cancer important? So you want to be able to have the answers ready for these kind of questions. And also when you're providing your answers or presenting your work, you want to be concise and clear and specific. And it's very good to provide visuals. I am a very visual person. I love to draw a lot. I love pictures. There aren't a lot of pictures on this presentation, but when I do give presentations, I love to have a lot of pictures on there because I feel like people are captivated more with pictures than just words. You also want to make a personal connection with your audience. You want to be relatable. And as I said earlier on, to be stimulating, you also want to encourage exchange of ideas because then you learn what they want to see and how you can apply your research in that direction. Obviously, you would have people ask questions that are not necessarily constructive and are more to poke, but you want to avoid any form of opportunity for confrontational interactions with the audience. And lastly, you want to be able to tell a story. I love storytelling, and I feel like when you tell your research as a story, it really allows your audience to see the trajectory from point A of your study to what the end result might look like. So why I think using a storytelling approach is really good is because I believe that it helps you to organize your complex information in a layman's term. And then it also helps you to convey your message in such a way that you can persuade your audience into why you think that your work, your research really matters to them. It increases engagement, retention, and then it also compels people to act. So a lot of people love storytelling. So I'm going to give an example again. Now I'm going back to my abstract, which I wouldn't read all of it because I read it earlier on. So this is my abstract. Now, if I want to tell it as a story, right? Let's see if I can do this. Okay. So now if I want to tell a story to a level 1 audience, I would say something along the lines of the doctors use drug to target a protein called the androgen receptor and to treat advanced prostate cancer. And this treatment often works at first. However, most patients eventually stop responding within a year. The cancer cells find a way to survive by using a different form of AR activity, which bypasses the treatment. My research involves studying these changes to better identify which patients are affected and understand how the cancer adapts. And by uncovering these weaknesses, we can hope to develop new, more effective treatments to help these patients. That is really short. Now, when I want to tell a story to a level 2 audience, this is a little bit long, but what I want to point out from this is as I'm telling the story, I'm kind of already preparing a scenario. Saying, imagine you're a doctor trying to treat a patient with advanced prostate cancer. Then I go on talking about, what happens when a patient becomes castrate resistant, and then, what the next treatment option is. And then I ask question in between. Why does this happen? And then I prepare an opportunity to kind of tell them why it happens. And then I give what my objective is, and then I also give an opportunity for the audience to think along the line of if they were in this position, what would they do, right? So here I said, would you focus on developing more treatments to improve success rates, or would you prioritize early detection of resistance to adjust treatment before relapse? So I'm giving the audience an opportunity also, while I'm telling a story, I'm giving them an opportunity to think about it and see how they would, if they were a research scientist, what would be their process in this research. And then I end with, the future of cancer treatment hinges on comprehending these challenges, and your discoveries could be pivotal. So essentially, I'm saying this is not just me, but this is something that can be done, together in achieving this goal. So I didn't want to read the whole story because it's a lot of words to read, and I don't understand that this slide is going to be made available. So you can go back and read it, and you have an idea of, what a good storytelling approach looks like. Now, a non-story approach. So one thing I want to draw to your attention is it's very complex. There are a lot of technical, complex terms that are used here, and it's almost like it's not engaging. So first of all, I talk about the androgen receptor. I use words like pharmacologic agents. I call out the drugs, and then, I use things like non-canonical pleiotropic signaling axis. Some of these really complex technical words are things that, a level 2 audience might not fully understand. Perhaps a level 3 audience would understand, but it's still very complex to the audience in terms of there's no opportunity for them to interact. There isn't an opportunity for them to see how, what would be, how they could see themselves contributing in the research if they wanted to on their own side of things. So this is just a typical example of a non-storytelling approach. This is an example of a complex technical approach where you're just giving the information and just letting it stand with no opportunity for engaging and no opportunity to either compel or persuade your audience to see that your research actually really matters and matters to them. So here I have just a few tips of what an effective communication should elements of what an effective communication should be like. So one is to know your audience. I talked about that earlier on. You want to identify the goals of your communication. What is your goal? What is the message that you want to share? And depending on the audience that you have, how do you want to persuade them that your research matters to them? And then you want to start with the most important information. And if you can remember when we started earlier on, I wanted to give all of you an opportunity to have like a pitch statement or one sentence to different levels. So you want to start with that. What is that one sentence, like a elevator pitch, to capture the attention of the audience and keep them focused? And then you also want to avoid jargons in complex technical terms because non-science or non-experts in your field could easily zone out. For instance, like my siblings who are not in the science field, if I say a complex word, that's the end of that conversation. They don't hear anything outside of that. So you want to use very simple, basic terms, layman language, like they say. And you want to be relatable. You want to kind of, provide them the information in a big picture manner where they can actually see, how your research really affects them or affects your society, and in a language that they understand. Visuals, I cannot say that enough. A lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, most people like myself love pictures, and pictures kind of keep attention. And so you want to be able to provide visuals. There's certain things that words may not accurately be able to describe or convey what you're trying to say. But once you have it in a visual or cartoon character, depending on the audience, obviously, that you're working with, it tends to give more meaning into the message that you're trying to pass across. And then you want to stick to the points, what the main point of your research is and what you want them to take home. And then talk about your scientific process And again, focus on the bigger impact and the big picture. How does this, remember that the goal is to make your audience understand why your research matters and why it matters to them. Why is it significant? And lastly, develop an elevator pitch. And I think that, with the one sentence pitch for level 1, 2, and 3 that you all did is already a very good step in terms of really having a good elevator speech or pitch for your project, depending on what level of audience you would be presenting to. And then lastly, I just want to leave with this slide, be on game. And that is one, the goal, establish clear desired outcomes for your communication. What do you want from you communicating your research to a diverse audience? And then know the participants to whom, you'd like to deliver your speech to. If you have a mixture, I think 2 years ago, I had a question about, well, if you have a mixture of, or, if your audience is a mixture of a level 1, 2, or 3, how do you prepare your message or your presentation for that audience? I always go with the safe, which is like a level 2 audience where you're not using too elementary basic language and you're not using too complex languages, somewhere in the middle. So you have your level 3 audience still understanding what your message is. Your level 2 audience obviously understands what your message is. Very rarely I've gone to presentation where they're second graders with, adults for certain meetings, but not to say that that doesn't happen. It does happen, but you would be surprised that there's some certain terms that even second graders understand. So I personally prepare for like a level 2 type of audience. Then the message, you want to create key statements that would move the audience from A to B. The goal is for your audience to know why your research matters and how it's going to impact them, how it's going to impact the general society. And you want to be able to provide that information in a strategic manner where they're able to see where you're moving from the beginning of your story to the end point. And that's why I always love the storytelling approach. And then expression, find the best way to define the message. And really, everyone has different ways of defining their message, but the goal is that you want your audience to be able to receive your message in a way that they're persuaded that your work counts and is important. And so with that, I thank you for your attention and I thank you for your participation in the interactive session. And if you have any questions, I am here to answer.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat or you can unmute and you can ask your question. Diane, did you want to do a closing?
Sure. Are we ready or?
We are ready.
Okay. Well, thank you as always, Remi. Fantastic presentation. I love the breakout sessions. That really was a nice, relaxing component where we could just open up and talk about our experiences and learn from one another. It was really good. I appreciated that new twist. We haven't done that before, have we, in your session? So I open the floor to others who might have some comments to make or final questions to ask, but this concludes our sessions on scientific communication. I'm going to let Catherine wrap everything up, but we hope we'll see you back next year. The one thing you can be assured of, it's going to be different. We always change things. Nothing is static with this group. And that's,
yes, exactly.
There's so much to learn and so much to do that we like to keep a broad perspective. And thank you again, Dr. Remi. So fantastic.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for this opportunity.